In the book I talk about the creation of a moral universe. And too often the church has assimilated to the moral universe that has been presented to us in our capitalistic, consumerist, militaristic, nationalistic country. We need churches that help their disciples inhabit a moral universe that is defined by the teaching of Jesus about the kingdom of God. I believe that my book, I Pledge Allegiance, is particularly important at this moment in our history as the church in America for several different reasons. First of all, it's relevant because of the very deep partisan political divide that has taken a grip, taken hold in this country, and seems to have established itself in a very long-lasting, abiding way. Secondly, it's particularly important because of the way that American evangelicalism / fundamentalism has invested itself in that partisan debate and chosen sides very clearly on which part of the divide we should stand. That then spins out a particularly dangerous implication from this divide, that so much of the church has confused defense of the kingdom of God and promotion of the good news of Jesus Christ with their partisan politics, such that defending a political candidate, advancing the career of a Republican politician, has come to be synonymous with the righteousness of God's kingdom and the cause of Christ in America. And that, I believe, is an exceedingly dangerous mistake. Well, I first began considering the need for such a book back in, I believe it was 2009, when the Pew Research Center issued the results of a study that they did, asking American citizens if they thought that it was ever necessary or useful to use torture as an interrogation technique. And I was still somewhat naive, even though I'm a rather naturally cynical person, because I was shocked when I saw how American Christianity, and I mean that term broadly, and from way on the left, progressive Protestant, Roman Catholic, way on the right, conservative fundamentalists, and everyone in between. If you slice us up, the people who were most encouraging or most likely to endorse the legitimacy of torture were the most theologically conservative members of the American church. On the other hand, those of us who were most unlikely to approve of torture were those way at the liberal end, and you didn't find a majority who prohibited torture until you got to the agnostics and the atheists. This is telling to me. That result tells us already that American Christianity is in deep, deep trouble. Some might even use a word like apostate in the face of such evidence. So as I began to think about this, and I noticed these trends among my students during classroom discussions and saw the same kind of results there in these young people, I began to ask myself, where has this gone wrong? And what is the proper correction for getting these young minds in a right track? And as a New Testament professor, my mind immediately goes to Jesus and the Gospels. That's the beginning of the church and of the faith. And if you're going to understand what was the heart of the teaching of Jesus, you come to the kingdom of God. And so that's how I began. It seemed to me that the biblical approach to a proper solution was to remind people or educate them perhaps for the first time what it means to be a citizen of the kingdom of God. That's our identity as followers of Jesus Christ. Then of course, once you get to that point, it raises the further question of our dual citizenship as residents of this world. We're residents of a nation state, such as America, while being residents and citizens of the kingdom of God, which should be our number one priority. And when those two come into conflict or even contact with each other, which they do every day, how do you negotiate those conflicts? And how does prioritizing discipleship to Jesus Christ as citizenship in the kingdom of God first and foremost affect or even countermand our citizenship in a nation state? I believe, from my experience of a lifetime in the church and years of being a pastor and then a teacher, what is, I would say, most often missed is having the church with the gifted teachers and ministers, proclaimers, Bible study leaders, all of that network of leadership be saturated as disciples themselves with a clear understanding of what it means to live according to an ethic of Jesus, where you follow the righteousness of the kingdom of God. And Jesus makes it crystal clear, there can be no debate about this. That ethic is an upside down ethic. Some people call it a reversal of our thinking. And I go into that extensively in the book. We need a core of teachers and leaders and discipleship makers who understand that reversal, have appropriated that reversal, and are able to teach and to model that reversal for others in the growing community. And that takes time and commitment and a lot of sacrifice. I don't see that much in the average church that I visit. And as I look back on my years as a pastor, it was a big part of my focus, but I would have done a lot of things different. I was not focusing on it as particularly as I really should have. I would say if the church is to have a future of any significance or substance, that has to be one of the beginning points for reclamation. I would like it to shake things up. I would like it, obviously, to gain a wide readership, not to become wealthy, because you and I both know that's not going to happen. But I'm sure every Christian author in some way would give a similar answer. We invest ourselves into the projects that capture our heart and attention because we care about the church. We care about God's people. And I would like God's people to take up the challenge that I'm offering, not just at an elevation of 30,000 feet, but down in the nitty-gritty of real life with plenty of places for application, such that we might see a regeneration of kingdom discipleship in the church down the block, in the church up the street. And I realize for many that will sound accusatory, and I intend it to be. The church in this country is in deep trouble. And I would hope that this little pamphlet that I've written could maybe help to generate some wide-scale reevaluation of what we're doing when we claim to be followers of Jesus in 21st century America. And then recognizing what needs to be changed, get serious about the business of doing that. Now, I happen to believe this is not a recipe for building a megachurch. Ain't gonna happen. So this is another thing that Christian leadership is going to have to wean itself off of. And I say this again as another confessional as a former pastor. I'll never forget the conversation where a young man whom I had prayed with to surrender his life to Jesus, he was a third generation convert in our church. He was a lawyer in the city. And after the new members class and after a Sunday service, he was hanging around and he came up to me and he said, "Dave, I hope you realize that our church is never going to be very big." I said, "Well, why are you saying that?" And I gave him my explanation for why I hoped we continue to grow and get bigger and bigger, because I want more and more people to come to Jesus the way that he did here. He said, "Oh, I understand that, and I would like to see more of that too. But you realize that the way you talk about following Jesus here, it's not the way I've ever heard it before in church. We need to get on board with that and not be so fixated on arenas and auditoriums, but be more fixated on faithful individuals on the ground who are loving and serving and sacrificing and living an upside down ethical life for the cause of Christ.